So a follow-up kind of thing to the Armored Core video that I made talking about how like most likely Armored Core is going to be a Souls game. Well, Miyazaki and Yamamura actually sat down both to do an interview with IGN about Armored Core 6, and there's some good stuff in it that, because I've already read this, of course, and I was kind of waiting to see if there's any more information, because we just keep having information drops in Armored Core 6. It just keeps happening over and over and over again. Just every time we turn around, Miyazaki does another interview and he's like, and here's this part of the game and here's that part of the game. I have some mixed feelings on Armored Core 6, which I've always had mixed feelings about Armored Core to begin with. Like, I've always felt like it's kind of some missed opportunity with the Armored Core series. I felt like this one might be, as I said in the last Let's Talk thing I did, I felt like Armored Core 6 could finally be that, full potential Armored Core experience that, they just couldn't do on other systems before. And that's a lot of what Miyazaki is saying in this, is all about like limitations on older hardware, and that they couldn't, or at least he couldn't reach his full vision of what he wanted the series to be. So let's jump into this real quick and like read through this, and I'll just give thoughts on each piece of information. So Elden Ring, which was so Elden Ring did 7.5 million units sold. It's Elden Ring is 2022's official game of the year. It won the award for it at the Game Awards and everything. Jeff Keighley's board of directors gave it the award, which I'm fine with. I whatever I said on the stream or whatever about fuck that shit, I was just kidding. I was just messing around. 100%. Both Elden Ring and God of War, and really Plague Tale also. They all deserve a Game of the Year award, because they were all really, really great experiences in their own rights. But anyways, announced during the Game Awards, like his predecessor, third person. Okay, so we're going to pick out all the stuff that Miyazaki is saying. Here we go. So I understand that, let's make this a little bit bigger. Make it bigger. All right, here we go. So Miyazaki-san, I understand that you're more of a concept creator for this game. Can you talk about the project came to be and direction that you want to take it in? Miyazaki, I think a more accurate way to put it is that I'd be part of the initial game direction on the project, not necessarily a concept creator. So he's the one who came in with the initial like vision and ideas and everything of like, okay, this is what it should look like, this is what it should play like, this is what it should be. And then Yamamura, most likely, once again, I still say Miyazaki's probably working on Elden Ring DLC, and of course they can't announce anything yet. So most likely he's working on that stuff. So he had to jump off from Armored Core, and it just seems like they had the opportunity to bring the license back. Miyazaki was like, I'm not going to give this opportunity yet, but we're still trying to make the Elden Ring DLC. Let's do both at the same time. So what that means is initial director, the part of the initial game direction team. I worked with several other people those early stages of the project, including engineers, designers, and other people at the director level, production level. So that would define the early concept of the game, the early designs. More specifically, involves myself and our line producer here. Points over to Kenneth. He was working with me on the early stages of the project, as well as one other member from the team. And then eventually we passed around. So it's a very small little team that started working on all of this stuff. Sorry. Then we pass over to Yamamura, who's joined us today as well, and he becomes the new director of the project. Like I said, he started it. Yamamura takes over. So they start right off the gate here with the Armored Core 6 will be closer to a Soulsborne game than the series has been in the past. No. So what I've been seeing is all the YouTubers are just taking like this almost first answer and being like, well, that's it. Miyazaki said it. It's not. And, but the thing with it, though, is like Miyazaki's vision of what a Souls game is the core of it is what we all agree on. I think it's the other elements that you start bringing into it in between, like control systems and difficulty and, whether or not you have a custom character and this and that. I think all that stuff is like, Miyazaki still has the vision of like this is what a Souls game is to me. Um, and I think everybody else has kind of tacked on more stuff on top of his original vision, and that's what's made it so popular. Is because there's so many companies that make Souls like games, that we anything that has a lock at hell. God of War 2018 Ragnarok are considered Souls games now because they have a lock on, and you're doing the camera locks directly on, you're doing sidestepping, and then you're chaining stuff into combos and whatnot, just like you can somewhat do in Souls games, some Souls games anyways. So conscious effort to try and deter it towards more what we've not been making a conscious effort to try to direct it towards more Soulsborne type of gameplay. First of all, let me just make that clear. Even if they intend not to make it into a Souls type of game, there is that part of the public that's going to be like, From Software, it's a Souls game automatically, and it has I just really hope they have a camera lock on instead of like like I said, the missile lock on. Instead of that, have like an actual camera lock on. The missiles track where your camera is locked onto, because that would make it a hell of a lot better. To me, that still puts into a Souls direction. Maybe not this genre, but the gameplay itself, like that, having a dedicated camera lock onto a target that pushes it so far into the Souls direction for me. The essential direction of Armored Core 6 was to go back and take a good look at the more concept of Armored Core and what made that series special. So we wanted to take the assembly aspect, assemble and customize, and that's something that keeps popping up in this whole thing: assemble and customize, which is your Armored Core being able to exact a high level of control over the assembled mech. So we wanted to take those two core concepts and examine those in a more modern environment. And this is where, like, Armored Core, the more I see into the Armored Core series, and I've always kind of felt this, it's a lot like a Need for Speed, in the fact of not that you're racing or whatever, but and not even the speed of it, but just like, if you're playing Need for Speed, you customize your car to fit your racing style, and then you take more higher end parts and you put it into your car to affect your stats, so you can go faster, so you can drift easier, so you can nitrous boost quicker. And that's what Armored Core seems like. I'm a fan of that. Like, I don't mind that at all, customizing the mech and making customize my playstyle of putting parts onto the mech that I find or buy or whatever, or customize even. That's cool to me. It's the mission structure on this that we'll get into. So of course, what that means is taking our know-how and experience from the game development in recent years and applying that knowledge to the development of Armored Core 6 and re-examining it together with those core concepts of Armored Core. So this, I don't mind that. So the real impetus of this project, I think, or at least the real appeals for me, comes from that aspect of assembly. So it's basically, if you were to tinker toy together a tank, make it walk and shoot missiles, here's what the game is going to let you do. Which, again, Armored Core to the core, also through and through. Being able to really freely assemble and customize the mech, I think this is what we really highly focus on in Armored Core, and having mechs or mecha as a theme. I mean, it's walking tank. That's it's really about the high level of freedom that adjusts each individual part gives. There's actually a much higher degree of freedom here in being able to see these affect both in-game and as part of the world building and as part of our player choices. We feel like this is a very big part of what makes Armored Core special. And that's one thing that they've gotten very good at doing too, is world building and making the whole universe around, what the what their license IP or whatever you want to call it is. Yamamura-san, you were lead designer of Sekiro. Can you talk a little bit about the lessons you learned from that project and how you're applying them to Armored Core? Yamamura says there are no elements directly referring to Sekiro, but I feel both titles share the same essence of battle, such as aggressive speed change and action-oriented fighting. So again, to me, I'm really hoping this feels like, so they also go into to start saying in here where it's like the stamina bar thing I said before. You can flip out parts to get a bigger stamina bar, or like your cooldown or whatever. But yes, enemies' posture inflicting a large amount of damage, a critical hit. So the bar that was on there, instead of having a stamina bar that you would drain their posture, and then you can go in there for a critical hit and smack them. That's Sekiro. And it seems like you're going to get the same thing here, where you have that bar that's like your stamina or your heat buildup or whatever they want to call it. You overheat the enemy's armored core unit, whatever, overheat the enemy's mech, and then you can smack the shit out of him and do it that way. Almost kind of like Titanfall in that aspect, where it's you damage them so much, and then you get the get out of the Titan, and you could, like, if you did it in Titanfall, you could actually punch through the front of their Titan, grab the operator, and just pull them out and just squish them. Or could you throw them up in there? I can't remember. Or no, that's what it was. What if they tried to jump out? You could just punch in midair and just punch them, and the other one too, you could grab them, hold them, and then do like the fart gas cloud. I always called it the electric cloud thing that you could do, and just shock the shit out of them and kill them instantly that way too. So it seems like you're gonna have some of that kind of stuff though from Sekiro, where it's like break or pressure the enemy to the point where you can get that critical hit, and probably that's going to be a big thing in boss fights. Instead of it being a health bar, you're probably doing damage, pressure, boom, and then you finally do a finisher. Again, very Sekiro like. Long range firefights, close range melee combats, which to me, I think if they do more, because long range combat has always been there, but the close range combat has never been great with Armored Core. The few of them that I played over the years, it's just never. The enemy goes side to side, and you just lose their lock on, and you can't do anything. So that's why I'm saying, like, have a camera lock on, where the camera also dictates, your positioning on which way you're going forward with it too. That would still, again, that's very Souls like, or Sekiro like. Well, Sekiro is Souls, but. Anyways, the enemy and his machine engage each other violently, creating a more aggressive and dynamic battle than that only mechas can engage in. Again, all right. So it sounds like you're incorporating some kind of counter mechanic. Rather than calling it a counter mechanic, what we want to stress is that the reason to continue attacking and continuing on offense. You want to create chances for yourself in combat and turn the battle into the player's advantage. Again, that's very Sekiro-like. So, to break the bar, get the critical hit. I feel this is going to create a really nice back and forth battle, back and forth flow in battle, and create this very nice mix of offense and defensive plays. But we want the player to feel that they're constantly able to pressure the enemy, and that's why we incorporated some of these systems. And that, to me, Armored Core has always been just you're just going forward. You're just gung ho going forward, anyways. Like that feels pretty similar to what it was. But like I said, it's just the game mechanics overall. It's just always felt like something's missing here, and I think it's that hard camera lock that really dictates because if that thing, if your enemy goes and he's off screen, and you're not locked on, going and spinning along with the enemy, and you have that lock on where both of the enemies are doing this essentially and going around in a circle. That's what, again, that's Souls combat. Armored Core has always been like, I have a lock on. Well, they flew away. Now I got to turn the whole thing around and shift the camera and figure out where the hell they went to, and then shing, oh, they're next to me. So I just hit the melee button one time, and it was so disorienting on that. And so I think that's one of the probably the quality of life changes that they'll probably end up going with. So yes, you're correct in saying that Armored Core is generally about the guns and ordnances and missiles, so we want to cater to this aspect this time as well. Of course, we have various weapons of various ranges and various encounters, both in two hands and on the back as well, for missiles and cannons and things like that. So a two-handed sword, big giant sword that you're using, or you just zip, and you bring out the missile off your shoulder and shoot it. Cool. I like that. If you can maybe ting ting ting, and then you drop them back, and then all of a sudden it's like, let's go, motherfucker, boom, and then you just have like this finisher is just the machine gun or the like laser cannons or whatever the fuck they put onto it come out and just boom, they just blow a hole through the boss fight. That'd be super cool. That'd be awesome. So Elden Ring's increased accessibility, for example, friendlier checkpoints and friendly summons was credited in part with improving its sales. What was your takeaway? Yes, one of our objectives when creating Elden Ring and creating this new open field style was offering more freedom in approaching accounts and more player freedom in general. This was a major concept that we had in mind when approaching that game. We didn't want to lower the level of challenge or dumb it down. So instead, we wanted to increase the level of freedom. We wanted to introduce more people to that style of game and wanted more people to enjoy that. Well, they got Game of the Year awards, so it worked, and they sold a shit ton of that, of Elden Ring. So I don't know personally if it was successful or if it had a hand in that, and that's why he keeps saying, like, I don't know what made Elden Ring so successful. Was it the co-op? Was it summons? Was it big boss fights? Was it the story mode? Was it the free roam? He doesn't really know what it was, and that's fair enough. How'd you apply those lessons to Armored Core? So we didn't necessarily take the same approach with game design and with that core concept when developing Armored Core. When we set out to reboot, so this is going to be a reboot of the Armored Core series, we focused on those two concepts that we touched on earlier, assembly and piloting. Which again just makes me feel like it's it's kind of like that NASCAR thing of you're putting, or NASCAR, the Need for Speed thing of you're putting your car together, you're assembling it, and now you have to be able to drive that thing and be able to drift with it. You have to have the pilot has to have the skills, but you also have to have the build with the Armored Core. So I feel like it was a very different approach right from the offset. But I think perhaps Yamamura can answer that a little more clearly. So what Miyazaki is saying is, in his mind, a Souls game is not about you assembling the parts to your equipment, but that's what Armored Core is. So to Miyazaki, this is a very different game than like your regular Souls game, because a Souls game to Miyazaki, what I think what he's going at is the approach of like leveling up, and it's not so much like totally the gameplay aspect of it, and that's where everybody's like, well, a Souls game is the gameplay only. Well, no, a Souls game is also about, how are you building your character. You will definitely have like a certain build for a certain kind of class type, where it's like, are you more of a heavy build? Are you more of a, mobility build? Are you more of a magic, user build, whatever? And that's where Miyazaki's like, well, no, that's not what we're going for. We're going for, okay, how are you going to customize it? But technically it kind of is, because you're going to still have a mobility build of an Armored Core where you can move a little bit faster with it. You're going to probably have one that has a little more armor to it, the more tanky build. You're going to have something that can shoot, with the guns and everything. So in that aspect, it kind of is translating the Souls vibe into the Armored Core series anyways. Because again, to me, Armored Core and Souls games, they borrow off from one another anyways. It's just something, it's the same people making each one. So they're going to have the same ideas, different takes on the ideas, sure, but it's still similar ideas at the core of it. Core. So let's see here. You've been at From Software for more than 10 years. How has approach from game development changed? Because I would say that From Software, when it was making Armored Core 5, man, I really wish they had done a video interview. Shit. This was between Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. Armored Core 5 was a very experimental multiplayer game. And then when I look at Elden Ring, for example, it's a very large-scale AAA open world. So it seems to me that FromSoft's approach to game development has changed a bit. So Miyazaki, once again, during development of Assassin's Creed, AC to me is always going to be Assassin's Creed. So Armored Core 5, I think both myself and Yamamura were working on Dark Souls 1. So it's a bit of a different situation there, but in terms of how we changed as a company, in terms of approach to game development, I think it's safe to say team members' resource. Yeah, he goes into a long thing about having way more resources and being able to dramatically increase the production quality of everything. The direction of the game development itself has not changed a great deal. Original concepts of Armored Core, and we wanted to apply our modern day company. So just like we have way more stuff we have to work with between motion capture and voiceover, and then also game engine stuff that we can do on the technical side of things for gameplay. That's basically what he's like going over and over and over again in this interview. A lot of that pops up. Completely different ballpark, so I'm extremely jealous of the team today who gets to make this new Armored Core game. Again, talking about all that. Say cultivate staff, learn to grow. Join their games. Then we wouldn't have come this far. It's always extremely okay. If we didn't have people playing and enjoy our games, we wouldn't have come this far. And that's one of those things of like they need to stick with something that people are used to, especially since Elden Ring was such a big hit. They can't afford to really have this next game be like, it's all right. They need something that kind of that basically keeps up with Elden Ring, if not overdoes it, because Elden Ring was a PS4 game that just they put PS5 features on it and like an Xbox One game that had Series X features in it and whatnot. That game was actually supposed to come out on last gen hardware, not the current gen hardware. So it got held back basically, and then they decided to make a PS5. There's really nothing that there's really no huge amounts of ray tracing and stuff and like reflection ray tracing and everything. Not like if you look at Armored Core's graphic fidelity and you look at Elden Ring, Armored Core is 10 times way more shinier and has so much more smoke and everything going on in it. It's just you can see it very plain as day on that. So Armored Core may not be so again like Armored Core needs to be that thing of like, this is the next gen, motherfuckers, let's go, Armored Core may not be trying to be a Soulsborne game, but does it have more of a Soulsborne essence than previous Armored Core games? And again, the reason why this keeps coming up right here is because From Software, it's been 10 years since they've done an Armored Core game. They need to go with the times on this. And this is where I'm kind of nervous about Armored Core, is that they're not going to go with the times. They're going to cater to the nostalgia of the OG fans. And instead of evolving Armored Core into what is very, what works really well and was very popular nowadays, into more of a Souls feel, Miyazaki really wants to keep into the old school feel. And in all honesty, let's be honest here, Armored Core, it's not the biggest seller of all time, but Elden Ring and Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro, they are. So again, like he needs to not care so much to the OG fan. I mean, I guess it's just Miyazaki being an old OG, like original Armored Core Souls fan too. He's got nostalgia for his old projects, and he doesn't want to stray too far away from that. Like he has a vision for what Armored Core should be. This really feels like Miyazaki going like, I couldn't make the project that I wanted to back then, but I can do it now. So let's do that. The problem with that is we just seen the same thing happen with Glenn Schofield and Callisto Protocol, and I have no problem with Callisto Protocol, but there is enough people where it's almost affecting the game sales a little bit that are saying like, this is not Dead Space. This is not as good as Dead Space. Probably because there's a little bit less shooting in Callisto and it's a little more melee, so people are just like about that. But again, it's that's a very good example of like where Miyazaki needs to kind of evolve the series into the modern time with that, and not just stick to, well, this is what Armored Core was before. Well, okay, there's a reason why it's been 10 years since you've had another one of these games made. It's time to take some of that other potential that's there of just doing. I mean, they can do so much more with Armored Core than just like, here's mission, go over there, just shoot or destroy this target, and then back to home base. You could do so much more with that. There could be storytelling being involved in there. You could have shootouts with like a big old jet thing comes down. You can start having shootouts with that, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. They can just do more with it. So Miyazaki, I think first of all, speaking to those aspects you mentioned, the heavy combat, the air mystery, the exploration. Oh, right. And it seems natural, for example, the Armored Core to move away from mission-based structure of the original Armored Core games and move towards the open-ended exploration that we've come to expect from Soulsborne games. This is where I'm a little bit iffy on that, because it's not so much open world exploration. It is still very linear-based exploration on 90% of Souls games. It's just Elden Ring. And this is where I think The interviewer is just thinking of Elden Ring. They're not thinking of, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Sekiro, something like a Neo, something, all those games that are very Soulsy like, where they are very linear based. You go down through here, you make your way up over here, maybe you fight some boss character here, you open up the door and boom, you're looped back around, but it's still a linear path that you're taking all the way around. Or you hit this elevator, you go down here, and it's still very linear of like, okay, go over here, boom, bam, there's your checkpoint, back to home base. It's still very linear though. It's not open ended really. I think first of all, speaking to those aspects, I think rather than being typically Soulsborne, these are just things that are typical from software in general. Fair enough. These are things we've always sort of enjoyed and always prided ourselves on. We don't want to give away too much with the storytelling. We always want to apply a certain level of challenge to keep it rewarding for the players. Good. These are sort of general habits when it comes to game developments, and these are just generally things I think we take from software history, going back as far as even Kingsfield. Yes, absolutely. As for how younger developers and directors like Yamamura are taking these elements and rearranging them in Armored Core, I think this is something that they can also answer separately as well. Personally, what I'm looking forward to is seeing how these, I think it directly applies to elements of heavy combat. I think you put, yes, the heavy combat is one of those things in Souls games that is very, especially from software titles, you always feel kind of weighed down. You're not jumping all over the place and like doing double jumps, and it's not Devil May Cry combat. It's grounded based combat. It's more of a kind of a parry defensive thing, but you can be offense as much as you want to be as long as you got your stats and your build the correct way. But you're not bouncing all over the place. You're not, it's not Forspoken where you're doing a backflip every time, a fireball comes at you. No, you can roll out of the way of it, but that roll is still grounded. And that's something like, that's what I would like to see from this Armored Core game. But later on in here, they start talking about the way is drawn to an apocalyptic setting, multiplayer. There's a part of this that Miyazaki starts talking. I think it was Miyazaki starts talking about how they are designing the combat, and it's making me kind of worried on that. Actually, move and fly will be similar to past Armored Core games, or are you seeking change for that? Yes, I think you can imagine something similar to what we had in the previous Armored Core games in terms of how you customize your mech parts in terms of mobility and how you're using that in the game as well. You can tune the generators or boosters to provide boosts or flight time or boost height or the explosiveness of the boost. These are all things. So in one way, this is cool, but in another way, it's like you're going to become, and this is what they need to not be, is overpowered. This is one of my big red flags with this, is you're going to become so overpowered that the game is going to be boring. That's what I've always felt with Armored Core, and that's what's put me off from actually like doing a lot with Armored Core, is that I can run through like 4 missions within 10 minutes, and I'm just blowing everything up, done, okay? I don't really care what the story is at that point, because it's just on a speech box. It's just talking to me on a speech box, and then, okay. But here's the other thing, and I kind of want to start to wrap this up a little bit. Because it is just a lot of like this feels like a traditional, it's not Soulsy based. It feels like a traditional thing. Also, the mission structure too. So of course, Armored Core 6, we wanted to focus really intense and mecha battles. We have generally tried to keep it on the challenging side, but it's not to say that it's a flat difficulty line throughout. We wanted to have some nice tempo changes and some nice balance to the difficulty and level of challenges. It can vary depending on the mission type. It depends on the enemies you're coming up against in those missions. So one other thing on the difficulty, well, why not just put the difficulty level up? Because the game's control schemes have never catered to harder difficulty. It's like the control scheme kind of sucks. All in all, with its tank controls, it sucks for trying to do that on harder difficulties. So it's either the game is too easy and you have kind of rough controls, or the game is hard and it gives you a challenge, but then it sucks because of those same hard controls. So if they fix that control template and take it away from tank controls and make it more of, just one analog stick moves everything. The other analog stick is your controls is your camera control. And then does it have to be R1, R2 for like a melee attack? No. They could actually do more of a, you pull on the R2 L2 buttons and you get a missile or you get a machine gun shooting off, and then your up top ones are like your targeting trackers or something. Sure. Um, I do like the whole philosophy behind this of like, you throw the parts on there and maybe you can fly a little bit higher up, but again, that feels like you're going to become overpowered with that, because you're going to be able to cut, you're going to figure out the optimal build and you're just going to start wrecking everything. And it's going to, but this is where the story also, the mission structure of it. And I think that the last thing that I really wanted to talk about was the mission structure. We do plan to have a versus mode similar to Armored Core. You'll be able to customize your mech. Which one was it? Why is FromSoft so drawn to apocalyptic settings? I think the second reason would be this kind of technical reason, but I'd like to say lively bright setting is a bit beyond From Software's capability and experience as a developer. Easier for us to direct and apply our. There was something in here. There was a part in the interview where they started talking about like the game. They kind of made Armored Core to be kind of like a multiplayer experience, but not online. So it's like this, like a very kind of RPG, very open world. I'm pretty sure it was in this interview somewhere. I'm trying to like find it real quick. But it was something on that lines of like, because the maps are a little bit more open, it was meant to be like, if you're playing online and you see that other player and you're, ooh, let's go, and that is cool and all, but it's just the mission structure that comes off from that. There's a reason why I don't like MMOs, and there's a reason why I don't like, like storytelling online, because the way that the missions get structured is so drastically different in that. Like you can't have, in the middle of the mission, a cutscene happen or something, because, those mission structures just ain't structured for that. Like let's just say Titanfall or something. Titanfall did a lot of, it's a power suit game. Sure. Okay. But it was trying to do a lot of storytelling in the middle of the missions. The problem is they had to do light storytelling instead of getting like very cool cinematic. Okay, there's big things happening. Here's a big reason why you give a shit to go and kick the shit out of this boss fight's ass. And that just is always missing from from Armored Core games, especially from like MMOs and stuff. But from Armored Core games, I just have never gotten that feel. Which I know there's probably a lot of people are like, yes, but you're merc and this and that. Sure, but that just feels like a backstory, just enough to create the world around you of like, why is there mechs running around? The fuck is going on here? And that's just a little bit of backstory. Be like, okay, so it's a merc group, and then you go on missions to try and make some cash and whatnot to upgrade your mech. What's the end goal to it? Hopefully, and that's if they make the end goal very cool, and it's like the end goal is to. I have no idea what they would do with Armored Core, because I don't really know which way they go with it. And this brings me, this is a good transition into, I will actually be playing a Legacy. I'm going to do a Legacy of Armored Core games. I can't say I'm going to love every Armored Core game, but I want to see what the hell is the backstory behind Armored Core. It's been 10 years since they came out with the last Armored Core game, so I just have never actually dived into it. I didn't actually think they were going to bring this license back, so I never dived into it before. So I am going to do a Legacy run of it. But that's one of the things I'm looking for. It's like, what is the end goal on Armored Core games, story-wise and everything? Like, where does the universe, go into on this? Of like, is there one big bad guy throughout the series? I know there's a bunch of reboots on this, so there's going to be, multiple different versions of the story and everything. I'm just curious to see which, is it going to get the attention of people? Because they, in all honesty, like I said, From Software really needs this thing to land after they just had this big outing with Elden Ring and Game of the Year and all that stuff. They need something to keep the fans engaged in with what From Software is all about. And I can guarantee you, if they go too like core with it and not enough souls, people are going to be mad, because the last 10 years has been the most successful they've ever been, which means the most fan base that they've ever gotten for Souls games. not Armored Core games. It's a little bit of a different thing. There is again, the games trade off from one another, and there's similar mechanics and ideas going into both of them. But yeah, like they're gonna need something for like the Souls community to really dig into. I'm hoping the story kicks in, does that. I'm hoping also gameplay mechanics, so you can customize it, even if there's one type of mech that does a very original, nostalgic kind of gameplay mechanic of Armored Core, and then there's another like Armored Core unit or a class or whatever you want to call it that does a very like Soulsy type of build. And you can make your builds and maybe mix match between the two different builds also to make your ultimate customized build. That would be super cool too. I'd be down for that. Like have a little bit of best of both worlds in there. Awesome. Then just give me a story. Don't structure the story to feel like it's a multiplayer game, because it's not going to work. It never does. And even if it's Miyazaki telling the story, again, I think Bloodborne is one of the best stories in gaming history. Elden Ring is pretty damn good too, with all the details and everything. It's not quite on the level of Bloodborne though. Sekiro was really just like, but anyways, as long as Armored Core 6 really brings it to be like, I wonder what the ending is going to be. I really wonder where this is going. That's when they're going to rope you in, because like if you do one more mission, you're going to see a little bit extra of the lore. Also, hopefully there's a big lore universe made, like a whole bunch of like characters in there that's like, oh, okay, so this guy's an asshole, let's go beat his ass. And that's going to be the other selling point if they can do that. I am nervous on this though, because it seems like they're going very like nostalgia based and very core to the original Armored Core. I just don't see that selling well, and I don't see it doing very well with the fan base. Everybody's gonna be like, "What the fuck? We get Armored Core 6, but we can't get Bloodborne remastered. We can't get Bloodborne 2. We can't get like Elden Ring DLC. We get this shit. That's who cares about this? This game is from 10 years ago. You're gonna have a lot of fan base start saying that stuff. So, yeah, big interview though. If you want to see the interview, this is or that's the title of it. And yeah, Miyazaki and Yamamura, they're working on something. Hopefully it catches the attention of everyone. So on the YouTube side of things here, if you like anything that you've seen in this video, like, subscribe, share, and all that. This is a bit of an update to a previous video I did. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, I will see ya next time.